The noonday sun baked the dust into gold along the trading post at the edge of the San Pedro Valley. Wagons creaked, chickens scattered, and the smell of sweat and horsehair filled the air. A crowd had gathered near the old corral where a man with a cracked hat and whiskey breath stood on a feed barrel, waving his hands and shouting with a merchant's pride. His name was Amos Greeley, and he was known as the cheapest, meanest farmer this side of the Rio Grande. "Step right up, folks," Amos bellowed, slapping the flank of a tired-looking cow. "Got here a milk cow, strong and steady, gives a gallon every dawn. And if that ain't enough, I'll throw in a worker for free, an Apache woman who'll do your chores and scrub your floors till her hands fall off." The crowd murmured, a mix of laughter and disgust. In the pen beside the cow stood a young Apache woman, her wrists bound with rope, her long black hair tangled and dusty from travel. She stood tall despite the humiliation, her dark eyes burning with a quiet, fierce dignity. Her name was Taya. No one asked. One of the men in the crowd whistled. "You traddin' people now, Amos." Amos spat into the dirt. "She ain't no people, she's property. Found her starvin' on my land after her tribe scattered. Fed her, kept her alive. She owes me work, and I aim to get my pay." Taya didn't flinch. Her jaw tightened, but her eyes never dropped. She looked across the faces, most turned away, some smirking, until her gaze stopped on one man at the back of the crowd. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a weathered face and a Colt at his hip. A dust coat hung over his chest like a cloak of silence. He didn't laugh. He didn't look away. The cowboy's name was Luke Carver. He'd come into town to sell a few head of cattle, but what he found at the corral made his hand inch toward his revolver. Amos noticed his stare. "You lookin' to buy, mister?" Luke's voice was calm, low as distant thunder. "You said you're sellin' a woman." "Throwin' her in," Amos corrected with a grin. "You buy the cow, she comes along for free. Don't get no better deal than that." The crowd chuckled uneasily. Luke took a slow step forward. "How much for the cow?" Amos puffed his chest. $40 cash. Luke looked at the woman again. "And her? What's her say in all this?" Amos laughed loud enough for the crows to fly off the fence post. "Her say? Ain't got no say. You buy the cow, you take the woman. Don't like it, don't buy nothin'." Taya turned her head, her eyes meeting Luke's. A spark of something, hope or challenge, flashed between them. She didn't speak, but she didn't need to. Her stare told him she'd rather die than be passed like a coin. Luke took another step closer, his spurs clicking against the planks. "Untie her," he said. The crowd went still. Amos blinked. "Now what's that you say?" "I said untie her," Luke repeated, his tone calm but dangerous. "You don't sell people. Not in front of me." Amos squinted, trying to read him. "You the law." "No," Luke said. "But I ain't blind." The farmer's grin faltered. "Now look, mister, I found her on my property. You ain't got no right." Luke's hand moved like lightning. The click of the revolver hammer froze every breath in the yard. "I got right enough," he said. "Untie her." The rope dropped to the ground. Amos's hands trembled as he did what he was told. Taya's wrists were red and raw, but she stood taller once free. Luke holstered his gun and reached into his coat, pulling out a small pouch. He tossed it onto the ground near Amos's boots. The heavy clink of silver coins filled the silence. "For the cow," Luke said. "And for her freedom." Amos stared at the money, torn between greed and anger. "You don't get to tell me." Luke's eyes met his again. Cold steel, steady as stone. Amos bent, scooped up the coins, and muttered, "Fine. Take her and the damn cow both." Luke turned to Taya. "You got a place to go." Her voice came soft, cracked but strong. "Not anymore." He nodded toward his horse. "Then you do now." The crowd watched as the cowboy and the Apache woman left the corral together, the cow trailing behind like a symbol of broken chains. Some called Luke a fool under their breath. Others watched in silence, something like shame twisting in their guts. When they reached the edge of town, Luke handed her a canteen. She hesitated only a moment before drinking. He said quietly, "You don't owe me." Taya lowered the canteen, the corner of her mouth almost forming a smile. "In my tribe," she said softly, "a man who gives water to a woman in need, becomes part of her life." Luke glanced at her, not sure what to say. "That's so." She nodded. "Yes. Maybe now, our paths are the same." And with the sun dipping low over the desert, they rode into the wide, wild silence, toward whatever fate the West would give them. They made camp by the river that night, the same river where the Apaches once held their ceremonies before the wars and the white men came. The water glimmered under the moonlight like liquid glass. Luke gathered driftwood, built a fire, and set the cow to graze nearby. Taya sat across from him, silent, watching the flames. The smell of coffee filled the cool air. "You ain't said much," Luke said after a while. "Words don't change what's gone," she replied. He nodded slowly. "Maybe not. But they help carry it." She looked at him then, really looked. "You're not like the others. Why did you help me?" He poked at the fire with a stick. "Because I seen too much wrong done and too few standin' against it. I don't sleep good when I walk away from something like that." Taya tilted her head, studying him. "Your heart carries weight, cowboy." He gave a small, dry chuckle. "Maybe that's why it's heavy." For a long while, only the fire spoke. Then Taya said quietly, "My tribe, they are gone. Soldiers came at dawn. We ran. I was taken. I thought I'd die there." Luke's jaw tightened. "You ain't dyin' under no man's boot, not while I'm breathin'." Her eyes softened. "Then I owe you my life." He shook his head. "Don't owe me nothin'. Just live it free." But freedom, she knew, wasn't just walking away, it was finding where you belong again. When morning came, the desert turned gold with light. They rode together through canyons and brush until they reached a lonely ranch, Luke's. The place was quiet, half forgotten, but it was safe. "This your home?" she asked. "Such as it is," he said. "Got a roof, got water. Not much else." She looked around, then said softly, "It's enough." Days passed into weeks. Taya helped fix the fences, milked the cow, and sang strange, beautiful songs in her language that made the wind stop to listen. Luke, for the first time in years, smiled without reason. But peace in the west never lasted long. One afternoon, a group of riders appeared over the ridge, Amos Greeley among them, his face twisted with rage. "You think you can steal from me, Carver?" Amos shouted, drawing his rifle. "You owe me, and I come to collect." Luke stepped forward, calm but ready. "I paid you fair. You paid for a cow," Amos snarled. "Not for my property." Taya stepped beside Luke, eyes fierce. "I am no one's property." Amos sneered. "Then you'll die like one." He raised his rifle, but before he could fire, Luke's gun sang once. The shot echoed off the cliffs, and Amos fell into the dust, his rifle clattering beside him. The others froze. Luke's voice cut through the wind. "Anyone else want to claim ownership of another human being?" Silence. One by one, the men turned their horses and rode away. When the dust settled, Taya looked at Luke, the man who'd freed her once, and now again. Her eyes shimmered with tears she'd never allowed herself before. "You risked your life for me," she whispered. He holstered his gun. "Ain't no risk in doing what's right." She took his hand. "Then maybe the spirits brought you to me. Maybe, you were meant to give me water." Luke smiled faintly. "Maybe we both were thirsty." As the sun sank behind the desert hills, they stood together by the river once more, a cowboy and an Apache woman, no longer bound by chains or fear, but by choice and fate. The cow grazed nearby, forgotten, as the West swallowed their story into its eternal, dusty silence.